Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail. All right, guys, Mission Whitetail, episode number 79. Our last one, we had Jay Maxwell in the house here in studio. Today, I am running solo. So we got Andrew and Wells in the studio with us. So, boys, if I say something that doesn't make sense or is off by any stretch, y'all interrupt me and let me know. Guys, the title of this week's podcast is Steps to Becoming a Better Whitetail Hunter. Including myself, I think everybody that watches this and listens to it, that is exactly what we're all trying to do, is become better whitetail hunters. And so I thought it was important to really dive into this. And so I made a bunch of notes. I've got my pen with me, so I don't want to miss anything. I thought about this early this morning while I was getting ready for work and getting ready for this podcast, and so I made quite a few notes. So forgive me if I have to pause or read or anything like that, but this is, to me, going to be one of the more important podcasts. And all this stems from the Bobby Worthington and Mission Whitetail field course. We just concluded our first one on Sunday this past week, and it was incredible. You know, I've done it with Bobby, this course, 3 different times, and this was the 4th time, and I'm still learning stuff. And one guy at the course said this literally cut 20 years off of his whitetail learning curve. So what is that? What exactly does that mean? And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I want to do a season update, and all this is going to tie together. The point is, if you can find a really good mentor, I would highly encourage that. For me, it's been guys like Don Higgins, like Bobby Worthington. You know, I've hunted whitetail basically from 5 years old till I'm almost 50 now. And it's just in the last 10 years that I have developed a relationship with Don and developed a relationship with Bobby, and it has been monumental, the amount of information that I've picked up from those guys. Don on the habitat side and Bobby on the funnel/big wood side. And so it's been pretty incredible to stack that on the stuff I have learned really the hard way. But let's back up just a minute. Whitetail, I want to do a season update first. And again, this is all going to fall into steps to becoming a better whitetail hunter. Anybody that's listening that might be interested in that field course, we sold out completely everything in like 2 weeks. We did have 2 guys that had to cancel their date, April 9 through 11. They're going to roll it over to next year. So if anybody's interested, we do have 2 spots open, April 9 through 11. You can email me directly to get all the information on it. It's in Pikeville, Tennessee, starts at 3 o'clock on Friday and concludes at around noon or 1 o'clock on no, I got the dates wrong because it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday class. So it'll start, the 9th is a Thursday, so it'll start at 1 p.m., 3 p.m. on Thursday and conclude at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Again, just email me, joe@osseogear.com, and I can get you all the information if you're interested. Not trying to sell it to you, just telling you it is available for anybody that's interested. So I want to start with a season update as to what we are doing here at Mission Whitetail right now, getting ready for the season, and how these are steps to become a better whitetail hunter. We just concluded our bow test, and that's on the Mission Whitetail YouTube channel for anybody that wants to check that out. And basically what we did, we got the 3 bows that we're interested in. We've got the new Hoyt, the new Matthews, and the new Prime. And we tested the physical weight, the speed, and the quietness of all 3 of those bows. So that's an equipment thing, right? We're trying to maximize our equipment as far as a bow is concerned, and looking at the speed, the sound, and the physical weight gives us data to pull on there. And you can see all of our results if you go to the Mission Whitetail YouTube channel. You can watch that video. It's not very long, and it just gives really the bullet points and the things that we look for in a lethal hunting bow. We've got arrows coming in. Kalen Pope, our buddy out of Alabama, has put together some new arrows for us to test. They are the new Victory HLRs. And the total arrow weight, guys, believe it or not, is 366 grains. Total arrow, that's with point and everything, with a 350 spine. So I'm very excited to get these arrows in, test them out of a 65-pound bow versus my last year's setup of a basically 480 grain all-in arrow weight and a 74-pound bow to see how they do. So again, more equipment stuff. Then 2 weeks ago, we did an Ohio trip. We did have a trade show up there, so we were going up to the trade show, made use of driving up there, and were able to stop and look at 2 new farms and scout those. We got 2 farms done in one day, and one of them is going to be pretty special, I believe. It's along a river. Hadn't been hunted but very little bit in the last year. Know the owner well, got to spend some time with him, walk the entire property, and found the spot. The other property is bigger. This one was 100 acres. The other one is 250 acres. And the other one did have some signs of people hunting. Nobody was supposed to have been in there, but we were able to pick that one up. One of them is a permission. I got permission on the 100, and the other one is a lease, so I will actually be paying for that one. And we'll see. We'll see what they do, but that's 2 more properties to go with the 37-acre tract that my buddy Jeff lets me hunt. So we're going to have three farms right there in the same area. So I'm stacking the deck on possibilities of finding a deer I'm after on 3 different properties. Last weekend, we went to Kansas. I spent 2.5 days in Kansas walking farms, learned 7 new properties, and found probably one of the best funnels I have ever come across. Have already got my trees selected. I walked the entire trail system, and it all mapped back to one spot that wraps around a little lake, and I can hunt it on a north wind or a south wind, and it's just a matter of a big deer getting in there, and I will have a really good chance of getting him. So there again, it's April, and today is actually April 1st, which is another reminder to guys. Anybody that's wanting to put in for Kansas, now is the time to do it. It just opened today. This podcast is actually going to air on the 2nd, but we're recording it April 1st. So if you need to put in for Kansas, you can go ahead and do that. It goes from now to the 25th of April. So two farms or 2 states walked and looked at in the month of March. Those were, things that you have to do to continue getting better ground and more ground to hunt. And the more intel I can figure out now, the less I'm going to have to do when it becomes really hunting season. And an interesting comment was made at the field course that you're doing the hunting now and you do the killing in November. Sounds obvious, but man, anything you can do now to get ahead of the game so that you're not having to do a ton of scouting. And this deals with rut funnel hunting. If you have those set up and know the trees you're getting into ahead of time, It's so much easier and more convenient. Now, if you're a guy that hunts hot sign and bounces from place to place, then yeah, that's not exactly going to fit into how you do it. But I have come to the understanding and the proof to myself that rut hunting to me is funnel hunting. It stacks the odds the most, and I have proven it and seen it time and time again. Not to say you can't kill them bouncing around all over the place, but the rut funnel stuff is where it's at for me. This weekend, a couple weekends ago, I got home, I guess, from Kansas on a Saturday night, and then that Sunday, I went into the swamp, pulled all of my cameras out that I had still in there, still running, to do maintenance on them. Another thing in March, we're doing whitetail work in March, getting ready for the season. Also establishing a relationship with the Wise Eye guys, new trail camera company called Wise Eye, and some buddies, Terry Peer, Don, some other guys have been running these Wise Eye cameras. Really like them. We're going to give them a shot. I shipped some up to Alberta because they have a data plan that works off any cell tower. So we're going to get some deployed up in Alberta because I'm going to be going up there early season, and I'm going to test them up there. My buddy Rob up there is going to get them out here soon, or not soon. He's going to get them out in June, July to start getting some growth and some velvet pictures. And we're going to run the Wise Eyes exclusively up there. I've been a Spartan guy for the last, I don't know how many years, love those cameras, but hearing really good things about the Wise Eyes. So as always, want to test them out and see. This coming weekend, I'm going to be going into the swamp here in South Carolina, and I've got some permanent not permanent, but they're rut funnel stands hung that I'm going to pull out. I'm going to check the straps, and then I'm going to create some new areas, something kind of unique, guys, that I have figured out in the swamp, and it's just from racking my brain hour after hour after hour because it's so hard to set up funnels there. I have literally found some spots that can be both rut funnel hunting and early season funnel hunting. And what do I mean by that? So I got with the local farmers, we do have a little bit of ag, and I was lucky enough to actually drive into the farmer when I was pulling out of the swamp. And I asked him, I said, all right, where are your beans going to be this year? Where's your corn going to be? And he showed me. He showed me, which fields were going to be in beans, which fields were going to be in corn. And so I've taken that information, and I know, okay, the bucks are going to be bachelored up going into these bean fields early season. I know the swamp really well. I kind of know where they like to bed early season in the heat and how they're going to navigate their way out of the swamp to get into these bean fields. Also talked with the caretaker that manages the one property I have permission to hunt on. I know exactly where they're going to be putting in their food plots this year. So again, that early season bed to food is really lethal if you can do it right. You can set up right on the X, and I've talked about this multiple times. If you set up right on the X, you have it's kind of an all or nothing thing. If the does get in there on the food early, smell you, the wrong buck comes in, it can ruin the whole unhunted bachelor buck experience of early season. But it can be also very lethal because he can come right out there and you can kill him. So it's kind of a roll of the dice, but I've done it. It can be successful. I've done it in Kentucky multiple times. I've done it in Ohio, in Alberta multiple times. So it can be done. But the safest way to do it, and it's situational, is to find the spot that they're coming through to get out to the ag, because then you can access and exit. If you're hunting on the X, on the food, and you've got multiple deer out there and it gets dark, it's very hard to get down and slip out of there. Whereas if you're hunting the transition from where they've bedded to the food, you're able to let the deer get through there and then get out of there without disturbing a lot. So I want to go through an example. that I found this week. I had a camera running on that big swamp buck, and I can't tell y'all how many guys at these trade shows have come up to me and said, man, did you have any luck with that buck? Are you going to be after him this year? And it is kind of neat to be able to share this experience with guys that listen to the podcast and are rooting me on to get this buck. And I promise you I'm going to hunt him as hard as I possibly can. And there was a spot that I got 2 daylight pictures of him last year, and I went in to that spot to look at it a little closer because I just dumped a camera in there. I'd found a little creek crossing, and I just wasn't sure about the spot because it wasn't a whole lot of sign in there other than the creek crossing and the trail. But sure enough, he came through there twice in daylight. And so I went in there to dissect it, and I found the creek crossing trail. I picked out 2 trees, and I was like, all right, this is where I need to be. I knew there was going to be a freshly planted food plot about 300 yards away from there. There was good, open, shady timber that sets up for early season bedding. He had bedded in this area before the flood last year, and it looks pretty clean and clear, so good chance he'll get back in there because in the early season it's hot, and that shade and that timber gives him not only comfort but security, because if anybody walks in there, he's going to know it from 300 yards away and be able to get out of there. But what happened, because it's flat ground and there's just a creek crossing, I just said, before I leave, I want to walk down this creek more to see if there are any more creek crossings. And as I went north, I found another creek crossing, and then another slight creek crossing, and then an old road bed that actually had a culvert on it with a huge trail, game trail, had some deer tracks and hog tracks in it, crossing there. And now I'm back to square one because he can go through any one of these creek crossing trails. So I didn't give up. I said, all right, think. And I said, I need to follow a few of these and see where they go. So I got back on the original one and I followed it. It actually crossed an old logging road, and it went into kind of a thicker cane hardwood area with a big mound on one side and a fresh clear cut on the other. And on the other side of that was a huge, steep drainage ditch that runs all the way out to the river, and it was only about 80 yards wide. And I said, okay, that's interesting. So I walked back out to the original creek crossing, walked north down it, got on the next trail, followed it. It ended up in the exact same spot. Went down further, followed that trail where the culvert was with the main game trail, and sure enough, it went into that same area. They didn't all 3 become one trail, but they all filtered through there. So I started walking between that huge river drainage ditch that there's no crossing and the big, fresh cutover with the mound, and I got down to where it was about, call it 50 yards. It's where that ditch kind of bowed a little bit and the cutover bowed in a little bit. And I picked 2 trees, and I said, okay, if these deer are funneling through here, now I've got a 50-yard gap I've got to cover. So if I do just a little bit of hinge cutting on each side and then get my stand out 20 yards on each side, I'm only going to have a maximum of basically a 20-yard shot that I've forced these deer into. And I looked at access. I'll have to get maybe some waders and even some rope tied in to be able to pull myself up that drainage ditch, but I can get in for the south wind hunt, and then I can access from the clear cut to get in to the north wind spot. But then what I've got is I got pictures of this buck in daylight going through there during the rut or the rut period, so it sets up as a rut funnel. But then I've also got great early season hot weather bedding that leads towards a cutover. That leads towards a food plot. And then you've also got browse in that cutover and along that ditch. And there's some muscadines in there. So it really stacks up. So that's what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to go in and do that hinge cutting, tighten that up, go ahead and move a couple stands. I'm pulling stands, so I'm going to check straps, going to move into this area, and then I've got another 1 or 2 spots similar to this. One is an early season spot where they're just going to be coming out of bedding, going to that ag that I found out about from the farmer, and the other is 100% rut funnel down the river that I will set up. So I'm going to have 3 spots set up for that buck and ready to go before the season even thinks about starting, and then I'll get out of there. So that's really our season update with what we have been doing personally to get ready and the steps we're taking to become a better whitetail hunter and have a better season. And that's a lot. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of work. But guys, I think anything that you want to try and be good at or get better at, it takes a lot of work. And so I'm going to flip my handy dandy note chart over here and talk about that Bobby Worthington Mission Whitetail field class that Bobby and I did this week, and just how important that was and how that kind of sparked this podcast. Bobby made a really unique point, and maybe it's not unique, but it was light bulbish for me. He said, knowledge is 95% of the game. And what does that mean? It's knowledge of the whitetail hunting craft, and it's also knowledge of the area or areas that you're going to be hunting, and then knowledge of your equipment. And I guess you could say it goes even further where it's being proficient with all of that, proficient with your craft, proficient with the areas that you're going to be hunting, intimately familiar, and then proficient with your equipment. The other 5%, so 95% is knowledge, the other 5% is equipment, right? Knowledge is an ongoing thing. We can constantly get better from learning from others, from having personal experiences. So knowledge is an ongoing learning experience. Equipment, if it's only 5% of the game, and I guess guys could argue that, but it made a lot of sense to me. Equipment is a controllable. And so we can take that 5% of the whole whitetail experience or the whole whitetail hunt and take 5% of that and really be great at that 5% while we are constantly seeking the knowledge that we're doing to try and get better and better at whitetail hunting. Andrew's up changing the camera around, so I got distracted just a minute, but it's all good. So how do you get the knowledge? Let's start there, and then we'll go into equipment. How do you get the knowledge? It's a couple ways, and I hit on this at the beginning of the podcast. You can get the knowledge by going out and doing it time and time and time and time again, and that is the best way to do it. You can get knowledge from listening to podcasts. You can get knowledge from going to different field courses. You can get knowledge from reading different books. I might have said that twice. You can get knowledge from podcasts. You can get knowledge from YouTube videos. But there is so much out there. I mean, go to YouTube and type in how to whitetail hunt, or how to mobile hunt, or how to hunt a rut funnel, or how to improve habitat. It is endless, the amount of stuff that is out there, some of which is very, very good, some of which is absolutely gimmicky and doesn't make sense. How do you tell between the two? The simplest way to do that is to do a deep dive on whoever is providing this knowledge. Do a deep dive on them. Have they actually been there and done it, like a Bobby, like a Don, like the Wenzel brothers, and many, many more I could name? These are just old school veterans that have a wall full of big deer that have done things the hard way for years and years and years. I'm not saying these are the only ones. There are other guys out there that are providing great knowledge. But if you did a deep dive on the Wensels, if you did a deep dive on Bobby, if you did a deep dive on Don Higgins and saw where Don, it's so funny. You see this stuff on TikTok and Instagram, social media, and guys talking about Don. And if you just go back and look at where Don started and where he came, I mean, it's pretty dadgum amazing what he's been able to do from where he started. I mean, Don, if you're listening to this, I mean, I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but very, very, very humble beginnings. And a young man that just had an absolute passion for whitetail and worked his tail off from super, super humble beginnings to where he is now today. He's made a very successful career out of whitetail hunting, doing exactly what he loves to do. The point, again, is that where you get your knowledge is utterly important, because you can be run down the wrong rabbit hole very, very easy. So I would encourage guys to try and find mentors, whether that's through text message or email or phone call or Instagram message. Man, do your research and really figure out the guy you're getting your information from, lock into them, and make sure it makes sense. You know, if you are a mobile hunting, big woods hunter, you need to find somebody that does that. If you've got a 100-acre family farm and you want to maximize that, I can't think of anybody better than Don Higgins to help you with that. If you hunt some big wood settings and you only have, a week to 10 days to hunt during the rut, then I would advise you to follow every single thing that Bobby Worthington does on how to set up a rut funnel and have that thing ready to go for your 10-day rutcation. So the knowledge part, very, very important, and you can't get enough of it, and it's ongoing. Now I'm going to dive into equipment, and we'll wrap this up. I have no idea how long we've been going today. I don't know if this is 30 minutes or an hour, but I'm going to get to the end here fairly quickly. Equipment being 5%, but it is an absolute controllable percent of your whole whitetail hunting system. And you should maximize it to the best of your ability. And we'll start at boots, right? And guys that have listened a lot, I've talked about boots, finding the right boot system. If you're having to hunt in really, really wet conditions, some good rubber boots, check the tread on them, make sure that they're not collecting a ton of mud and dirt, so that when you're up in the stand and you've got to turn, you don't have mud and gunk falling out of your boots, at the moment of truth. Sock system. Okay, I'll give some examples of boots. Osseo actually has a new set of boots coming in that we're really excited about, not to give Osseo a plug. I've also liked the old standard muck boot. Not the really, I don't know, I think it's, well, as you may know, is it called the Woody? Is that one of the original ones? He doesn't know, but just the original brown muck boot. I believe it was called the Woody, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Those are great rubber boots. The ones that we have coming out at Osseo are going to be incredible. We spent a lot of time working on these, so I think they're going to be a good hit. Socks. I really like the Kenetrek socks. I really like the Darn Tough socks, and I even like Smart Wool. It's called the Woody. Yep, it's the old original Woody. I think they make an insulated and an uninsulated pair, but they're good too. Socks, Darn Tough. I like the Smart Wools, and I really like Kenetrek, and they make a mid-grade sock for most of the hunting season, and then they make the Kenetrek for sure makes a mountain hunting boot. Alaskan big game is what I believe they are called. Again, guys, I'm sorry I'm not getting this right. Andrew, maybe you can drop it into the comment section It's their heavyweight sock, merino wool, and they've got an awesome liner sock, this polypropylene that keeps moisture off your feet. Other equipment, clothing. I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of Osseo, and I think we really have dialed the Whitetail system from early season all the way to late season. But regardless of what clothing you wear, man, test that stuff out and make sure it's doing what you need it to do. I mean, if it's super hot, we're coming into summer, get your early season stuff and get it out and see how it performs when you sweat. Throughout the season, test different layering, or you can come to our website and just look at how we layer, whether you run Osseo or not. We've got and we will have some new videos on layering and how we stack stuff depending on weather, depending on wind, depending on temperature, which is all part of weather, how we run our stuff and how we pack it in. Your packs, what kind, seems simple, right? I just need something to carry my stuff into the woods. Well, let's talk about that. How are the zippers on that pack? Are they noisy? Are they quiet? Are they waterproof? Is it a one-handed zipper, a two-handed zipper? What's the outer fabric like? If you turn around and rub it by accident and there's a buck right there, is he going to hear that? Is it that heavy cordura on the outer of the pack? And, you're going to rub your binoculars on it, or your bow cam, moving it off of your bow hanger. Little tiny things like that. We talk about the details of everything, especially with equipment. But how are the pockets designed? Things that you may need, like a backup release if your release was to fail. If you keep your calls in it, how accessible are they? All these little things you need to look into. The bow hanger, what type of bow hanger is it? I'm just going to go to Walmart and buy a couple bow hangers. No, look into that. I can assure you there's one, again, I'm so bad with names, the Crawford bow hanger, and their big slogan is the best screw in the industry, because it literally will go into any tree you put it in. Their screw-in steps, their bow hangers, their gear hangers. It's like Crawford Industries, or Wells, I'm sure, is looking it up. But Cranford, y'all found it? Yeah, it's Cranford. And Cranford Industries, and just remember the best screw in the industry. I have zero affiliation with these guys, but they really have the best bow hanger on the market. It'll go into any tree that you try and screw it in. Everybody's had it happen. You've bought one of these cheap ones from Walmart, or one of these cheap equipment hanging screw-in holders, and you get to the tree, and it's a hard hickory or something like that you're in, and you can't beat it in there, and then what do? So that just is details. Binos and rangefinder. What kind of binos are you running? Do they work in your setting? You've got some 10x42s. Is that too much? If only you're hunting in tight timber, is that too much? Are you really able to get a field of view that you need? Your rangefinder, okay. How does it work in fog? How does it work in low light? How does it work in rain? I'm not going to drop a brand here, but I had a really high-end pair of range-finding binoculars, and I was in Mongolia hunting ibex, and it was a snowy, kind of rainy, foggy day, and we were up on this knob glassing in the mountains, and two really big ibex popped out of this drainage and were coming to us, and I couldn't get a range on them. I tried over and over and over again and could not get a range on them. And it cost me that. I could not get a range on them. And then I've tried other ones since then and have ones that work much, much better in fog and snowy and rain type conditions. So something to test and look into. Trail cameras. We talked about this earlier. What kind of trail camera are you running? Are you going into Bass Pro and grabbing the $100 one? Or are you going online and looking at, again, guys you trust and have verified and seen what kind of trail cameras they are running and how they are running them, and then testing them for yourself? Are you actually going out and testing them at night? Walk past those things at night and see if you hear a sound or see some big flashing lights. Test them out. How are you setting them up? Are you setting up high? Are you setting up right in the deer's line of sight? Are you maybe putting a log up against them or a big branch behind them to kind of break up the silhouette? Are you trying to put them up in branches so they are hidden? All those little details. We talk about it over and over again. Stands. What kind of stands are you running? Again, guys, this is maybe only 5%, but it's the controllable percent. You can go in with any type of boot, socks, clothing, pack, bow hanger, whatever. And that's a point that Bobby made very clear. If you've got the knowledge aspect of the game figured out, the other stuff will fall into order, and it's not going to matter as much if you found the best tree in the woods to be in and you've got decent equipment that you're proficient with, you can get it done. But why not have both, right? Why not have the best knowledge you can have and the best equipment? So that's what I'm going for, because we're talking about what you can do to become the best whitetail hunter or a better whitetail hunter that we're all trying to become. We'll dive into bows. We just did our bow test. You can look at that. Get the bow and test it. Try the best you can to put blinders on and not think about brand. These companies do such a good job of marketing their bows, and they're all very, very similar, but there are some keys that I look at in selecting a bow that can absolutely make or break a hunt in certain situations. And what do I mean by that? I want to get the most performance out of it so that I can run as light a poundage as I can run and still get the performance I want. For me, this year I'm going to test a super light arrow, total weight, again, 366 grains. I'll have them this week. I want to try to get down to 65 pounds, still shooting about 305 feet per second. That's a flat shooting arrow. It gets to the deer quicker, and with that much speed, it's going to get good penetration. Guys, I'm not getting into a penetration, heavy, light arrow debate. I've already run that course, and I know what works for me and have killed a whole bunch of critters in the last 5 years using what I have proven to myself to be the most lethal arrow and broadhead setup. But back to the bow, light poundage, what does that do? I'm able to draw that in any type of situation. I talked about on a previous podcast guys being overbowed and not being able to get drawn or having to make a super awkward draw cycle that's going to expose you. So having lighter poundage when it's super cold is going to make it easier for me to draw. Also, it's going to make my draw cycle smoother. The 3D shooters will show you the perfect draw cycle where you lift the bow up and as you're coming down, you draw the bow back. Well, that isn't real practical when you got a 5.5-year-old 190 at 15 yards. All that movement, he's going to pick you off, unless, of course, you're wearing Osseo, and then you're good to go. Think so, boys? Yeah. So being able to draw the bow straight back from the deer without any awkward or herky-jerky motion can save it. It can absolutely save it. And a lot of these bows nowadays have this big hump on the back end. So I'm looking for a bow that still gets me plenty of speed, is still very quiet, but has a draw cycle that I am able to pull back very, very smoothly without a hump anywhere along the draw cycle. Now, it is true with muscle memory, you can get over some of this, but it still becomes an issue when you've got to contort your body and turn it a certain way, like around a tree or under a limb or in a ground blind, and you have to make an awkward draw. And when you have light poundage and a very smooth drawing bow, it's going to make your life a lot easier and give you a greater chance, which is what we are trying to do, to maximize our odds. But I'm not going to sacrifice penetration. If I get this 366 grain arrow and I test it against my 480 grain arrow at 74 pounds versus 65 pounds, and I can just tell that it's penetrating a third as good, and then I take it over and shoot some African animals here this summer, and it's just not getting the penetration that I need, then I'm going to absolutely go back to my bow last year, because I know that recipe worked very well, but I'm trying to make it better. So constantly testing to see how we can do that. Arrows I just touched on. Test your arrows, guys. Again, look at a lot of reviews from guys you trust and guys that have been in it a long time, and understand penetration, understand arrow weight, and see what they do. But they're not guys that talk theory. They're actually going out and stacking whitetail bodies, and they're stacking animals. Those guys have seen it and done it outside of theory. I cannot beat that point enough. Get your knowledge and your intel from guys that stack stuff up. Nocks. What kind of knock are you running? Are you running a lighted knock? Are you running non-lighted? What is the weight of the knocks? What is the performance of them? How long will they stay bright? Just everything, every little detail about that knock. How do they sit on the string? Are they pinching in your D-loop? You know, all that stuff. Don't just shoot your regular knocks all season, all summer long, and then throw on the lighted knocks the day of the hunt and go out and fire those things off. That's not going to help you. That can absolutely hurt you. Broadheads, do some testing, man. If you can go somewhere and shoot some hogs, try that. If not, build you some molds. We've got a great mold. If you look at one of our previous videos on a broadhead test, I love that mold. No, it's not a whitetail deer. No, it's not an animal at all, but it replicates it, and we're able to get consistent results. And it's not a mold that causes a ton of friction. So you can learn a lot with that mold. We're going to be shooting some broadheads into it here in a couple weeks, so you can follow along with that. Let's see. I have no idea what fletchings. I couldn't read my handwriting. Fletchings. How quiet are they? How well do they steer your broadhead? Do we want 3 or 4 fletched arrows? For me personally, with my setup last year and for the last 4 years, a 4-fletched mechanical broadhead. I've shot the Rage Trypan, and now I have gravitated to the G5 Mega Meats, also like the G5 T2s. If I've got a big boned animal that I'm trying to kill, I would have no problem shooting a Cape Buffalo. Let me say that again. I would have no problem shooting a Cape Buffalo with the G5 T2 broadhead. I don't know if that's legal or not. I'll find out when I'm over there this year, but that is if you're looking for a mechanical that is like a fixed blade head, that T2 is the one. And for everyday plains game / whitetail / axis deer, man, the Mega Meat is where it's at. Most devastating head I've ever shot. You guys have heard me say that 100 times. Back to fletchings. I'm shooting the heat vanes. I shot the Q2 eyes, and then I've got some boning X vanes that Kalen has thrown on these new HLRs from Victory. I'm anxious to get a sound test on those and see how they steer. And how can you test how they steer? What I would recommend, if you're shooting a mechanical broadhead, it's going to fly very similar to your field point. You can shoot them in wind, but shooting a mechanical broadhead into a target is not a great idea because you're going to ruin it, but you can do it some. But what you can do is you can take a small profile, like a 1-inch or 1 1/8 inch fixed blade head, and you can shoot it into a target a bunch, and you can shoot it in wind, and you can shoot it at distance, and you'll see if your bow is completely tuned. We got to start there. I give the Ranch Fairy a lot of credit there. He taught guys the importance of tuning their bows and having it flying perfect. So kudos to you, Ranch Fairy. I know a lot of y'all would never think that I would say that, but man, there's good everywhere, and that was absolutely a very, very good thing and positive for the industry. Test those fletchings and see how they fly in windy conditions and in torquing your bow and at distance. But you got to start with tuning your bow. And what I'm looking for is the quietest, lowest profile fletching that I can find that will still steer my broadhead very, very well. And there's a lot to that. I mean, you don't have to run all the way down this rabbit hole. I'm just letting you know how I do it, and you can give it a try. Let's see. And then to conclude, once you've looked at all of this, I know where I'm going to get my knowledge from. I know I'm going to spend a lot of time in the woods. I know I'm going to spend a lot of time this off-season learning my properties, is to get very familiar with all of your equipment, guys. Test it all out this off-season. It's a lot of work. And then get absolutely deadly with your bow. Get where you can draw your bow without even thinking about it. Sitting down flat, just draw it, no problem. Your muscles are in tune. Get elevated. Take some buddies and go hang a stand and have a little tournament in the woods with some 3D targets. It's fun. We'll probably be doing that somewhere around the ICO office with everybody here that shoots bows. So, guys, enjoy it. It's a really fun process, or I find a lot of fun in it. It is a lot of work, but we're trying to be as good as we can be, and we're trying to get better and better. And I've always found the hard work in breaking down every little thing to the minute detail can help you improve there. Again, knowledge, 95% of whitetail hunting. Equipment, 5%. Equipment is something that you can control, so get as efficient with that as you possibly can. We're never going to be at 95% of knowledge. You're never going to get there, but you can get close and you can strive to get better every year. I would encourage you to get out and look into some of these field courses. Bo Mortonic and Johnny Stewart and those guys put one on this weekend, East meets West, up in Pennsylvania. Looks like they had a heck of a time, and those guys really understand big woods, up in PA. Bobby and I have got the course. It's not a big course. We only do about 40 guys a year, so it's small, but that's all we can really handle with the weekends because it's so in-depth. You can possibly get into one of those next year. We'll have the dates open in October. Guys, we appreciate it. I think this was very helpful. It sure was for me, making these notes and thinking about my process for the season. It's always refreshing to go back through all of that. Any questions, comments, let us know. Email me directly, joe@ociogear.com. Reach out to me, Joe Miles Hunting on Instagram or Facebook. And we will be back next time with another guest and go from there. Thanks, boys.